Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the full licensing committee. Item 1 on this morning's agenda, apologies. Do we have any apologies, Michelle, at all?
Apologies for absence received from Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you. Substitute members? There are none?
Sorry, none received.
None received. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Members, do members have any declaration of interest with regards to the agenda item this morning? No? Thank you very much. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Are members happy that I sign as a true and correct record the minutes from the licensing committee the 7th of December 23 and the licensing subcommittees 14 and 23 of November 23, 6th and 12th of December, and then 3rd, 17th, 22nd, 24th and 31st of January 24, and finally the 14th of February 2024. Are members happy that I sign those as a true and correct record? Thank you. Item 5, public issues. I understand there are no formal public questions or statements for this morning's agenda. Right. Before we move on to item number 6, can I just ask the clerk to run through the housekeeping measures, please?
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Committee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Brady Road under the flyover in the surface car park at the front of the building. Finally, please can we ensure all background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on laptops. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Moving on then, item number 6, review of Hackney Carriage maximum fares and charges tariff. The council has received a request from Mr. David Lane on behalf of the BCP Taxi and Private Hire Association for an increase in the current Hackney Carriage tariff. Can I ask Mrs. Randall and Anchor Randall to take the committee through the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. David, do you want to just come up and then I'll do the introduction and then you can give your bit. Thank you. Sorry. We get there in the end, don't we? So as you've explained, Mr. Lane is here on behalf of the BCP Taxi and Private Hire Association, and they have requested an increase in the tariff chart fees that are charged in Hackney carriages to passengers. So as a district council, we can set those fees, and it is the maximum fee that appears on the meter in the Hackney carriages. And just sort of for information, Hackney carriage are the non-pre-booked Hackneys that are wait on ranks or can be flagged down by passengers. We do not have the authority to set private hire fees. That's not within the legislation. So all we're considering is the maximum fees charged within Hackney carriages that are on the taxi meters that calculate distance and time. And that's how they create the fee at the end of the journey. And yeah, it's all set out within the report really, and I'll leave it to David to explain further if anyone's got any questions.
Thank you, Nananka. Are there any questions for the officer at this point in time, members? No, thank you. Can I invite Mr. Lane? Would you be kind enough to address the committee, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you wish me to read the request out? It is in the...
I think that would be beneficial for record. Thank you.
We have we remain very grateful for the support given to everyone in our trade, particularly by agreeing 2 fare reviews in 2022. However, should you agree this request, it will be implemented in May 2024, some 18 months after the current one was introduced in November 2022. The 2 reviews agreed in 2022 increased fares by just over 14%. Using figures available from the ONS, the general cost of motoring, the RPI motoring index, has increased by a total of 20.98% in the period from September 2021 to August 2023. This does not include any allowance for other increases which we cannot avoid, such as the fees for our driver and vehicle licences, which increased by 4.5% and 12.5% respectively last year. Furthermore, we have accepted the need to do our part in the battle against climate change by only relicensing vehicles that as a minimum are Euro 6 compliant after January 2024. We will also complete the change to the new livery by the end of 2024. In addition to the above, we have all experienced the general inflation pressures over the last 18 months. It would therefore seem appropriate to request an increase in the range of 7 to 9%. However, being mindful of the benefit we enjoyed from the temporary dip in fuel prices, which occurred shortly after the last increase was granted, and to be fair to our customers, we have limited our request to 4%. We would also like to request an additional entry be incorporated onto the fare chart to make it clear that unavoidable charges, such as tolls, ferry fares, or airport drop-off charges, may be added to the fare at cost. It is some years since the extra charge of £1 for transporting more than 4 passengers in a multi-seat vehicle was agreed and applied. Bearing in mind that these vehicles are becoming ever more costly to provide and maintain, and the saving available to customers over using 2 vehicles, we consider it timely to raise this charge to £2. That was our request.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Was there anything else that you wished to bring to the committee's attention this morning?
The only couple of things, having just renewed our own taxi insurance, we were speaking to the taxi provider and he has advised us that the average increase for a taxi policy is in the region of 25% currently. And there are a number of providers no longer offering this service. So, you know, it's becoming increasingly difficult to insure vehicles at the same cost as we were last year or the year before. And also, I can't see any reason to object to your next item on the agenda, as the request is for roughly the same increase.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lane. My view on the additional unavoidable charges, such as the tolls, ferry fares, and airport drop-off charges, my view is that those who use the service should be fully aware that these are over and above costs, and that they will be added to the cost of the. I think probably the trip to the airport is probably the biggest gripe that people have, but it's clearly not in your remit. It's obviously the service providers. I have nothing further to add. Do members have any questions or any comments with regards to the request this morning? Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is just a query. I totally understand you need to increase the charges to cover all the additional costs, and I've just taken out new insurance on my car, so I know exactly where you're coming from with that. Yeah, it's just on the where it says the proposed changes, item 15, and it's a further amendment is requested for the extra charge permitted for 5 or more passengers in a multi-seater on tariff 1. This goes, etc., etc. Why, could you just explain why you have to charge extra for that sort of arrangement? It's just a query. It's not a criticism. It's just me. I don't know why you're doing this.
When a vehicle is asked for as a multi-seater, it quite often, even though it may be a hackney carriage, they may get the request from one of their regular customers, and because they want a 6, 7, 8 seater, they then have to travel a distance towards it. And okay, in those circumstances, they're allowed the running in fee, but the alternative is for the customer to have two taxis at double the price of one. And it's a sort of compromise of the additional cost. And one of the effects of the policy that we have at the moment is that what were 6-seat vehicles, Ford Galaxies, Volkswagen Tiguan's, etc., are no longer deemed to be suitable to be licensed as 6 vehicles, because 6-seater vehicles, because of the amount of boot space when the 6 seats are utilised. So that niche of vehicle is no longer available for replacement, and people who want to do it are having to buy 8-seat vehicles, which are probably anything up to £10,000 more cost-wise than the 6-seater. Okay.
Thank you for that. It's you can understand the reasoning behind it when you know what the problem is. Yeah, thank you.
We've got some further questions. I didn't quite see who was first. Emily. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a question. A lot of what my colleagues have said I agree with. It's just a query from someone very new to the committee. Looking at the tariff 1 and tariff 2, the day and night rates, you've got the waiting times on there, and I just wanted to understand a little bit more about how they're calculated. So it says for the day rate it's 20p per 37 seconds, and for the night rate it's 25p per 38 seconds. It just seemed quite, yeah, I just wanted to understand a little bit more how they're calculated, if that's all right, because they're very specific.
That is a question I wish you hadn't asked. and I'm sure the 2 officers wish you hadn't asked it either. It is, the waiting time is something that is put in to the fares to recompense the driver for any time, basically, whilst they're sat in traffic or sat at traffic lights and what have you. It's been created historically, and the timings that we have now of 20 pence per 38 seconds or 25 per 37 are just a way of putting the 4% onto that figure. It's, I don't know if I can explain any more. It is there to make sure that you're not paid, because while your wheels aren't rolling, you're not earning money.
So am I right in saying that it's based on a percentage then, is how you come to that figure?
Yes.
Basically. Yeah. I understand. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry for my tardiness today. Just going back to the Councillor Moore's question as Vice Chair. It's an interesting phenomenon, and I won't ask a question that Newbie would, because I think I made the very same error when I was first on this committee, of the peculiarities of how fares evolve. But just looking at the question mark of the boot space, I mean, it's long since established that our fleet needs to be somewhat different because we're a tourist town, and you'll be taking people coming down for short breaks or holidays, etc. But my question is that with the change of configuration of vehicles, so that a 6-seater is no longer a 6-seater and have the required boot space, and that people have to buy an 8-seater to avoid 2 fares, as it were. How many 8-seaters are actually on the fleet, and what demand is there for that particular type of journey? Because it seems to be quite a peculiar journey, and maybe it's the cost of living that you could expand on the problem you're trying to solve with the fleet that you have. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest use of the larger vehicle is probably fair to say Friday and Saturday nights. Groups of students and other people going down, to the nightclubs and back. The other one is for families of over 4 people, mum, dad, and 2, 3, 4 kids, wanting to go down to the beach, or indeed anywhere. A lot of the time they work as 4-seaters, or they're on the rank, and it is 1 or 2 people that want to travel in them. So at that time they wouldn't be able to charge the extra fare. It is only when they have got over 4 paying passengers that the fare would be incurred.
Thank you, Chair. I think I understand now. I was just concerned that there was a figure quoted of 10 grand or so for the additional seating capacity. It seemed to be quite a niche market to fulfil, but it's worthwhile to have that feedback from the trade as regards the nature of the trade changing market, as it were, for our passengers around our towns. Thank you very much.
And I'm sure it's fair to say that the students will undoubtedly try the cheapest option, won't they, to get from A to B.
Yeah.
And I'm sure not only students.
No.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? Right, the recommendation as set out is that 1, we approve the changes, 2, approve the changes with amendments, and 3, refuse the proposed changes. I'm happy to propose from the chair that we go for option 1 and to approve the changes. Are members happy with that?
Yeah.
General consensus? Thank you. Thank you very much. Approved. The next item on the agenda, members, the committee is asked to consider an increase to the fees charged by the council for the administration of the Hackney carriage and private hire licensing regime. Could I ask Nanka to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report is to consider an increase in the fees charged by BCP Council for the administration of the Hackney private hire carriage licensing regime. The legislation allows local authorities to set the fees charged to recover the costs associated with the administration and compliance of licensing of drivers, of vehicles and private hire operators. Any change is subject for vehicles and private hire operators will be subject to a 28-day consultation period. But for drivers, any change could come in from the 1st of April. We recognise that there are inflationary pressures and increases of the cost of living have had an impact broadly. However, as a local authority, we've got to cost recovery fee structure where it's permitted by the statute. And our current fees were implemented by the 1st of April last year. And since then, inflation has increased staff and costs, as well as corporate recharges and the direct on costs from suppliers. Our fees are on a recharge basis for the upkeep of the ranks as well, and it includes that and the requirement to undertake the unmet needs survey every 3 years, and it includes all the compliance checks we undertake as part of the licensing regime. So the proposed fees are set out in Appendix 1 and have been calculated to reflect the costs of providing the service, with an uplift of 4% from last year's fees, basically. It is considered that any greater increase would risk a potential loss of driver and vehicle numbers to neighbouring local authority areas where the fees are significantly lower than ours. But maintaining the current fees or reducing them would present an unmanageable impact on our budgetary position, which would directly impact on our staffing levels, basically. I did include in Appendix 1 about benchmarking information, which shows what other local authorities charge. You'll see we're sort of similar to Southampton, which are a similar authority to us, but the two neighbouring ones are much more rural authorities, so they have very different checks and balances in place, which may well account for the difference in the fees that they charge. Happy for any questions.
Thank you, Naneka. Do members have any questions for the officer at all? Michelle.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks for for this report and the amount of work that's gone into it, obviously. I'm just curious, you said that neighbouring councils or local authorities charge significantly less. But on what I'm looking at on page 123, the new replacement private hire vehicle application fee, for example, we are proposing a fee of £109, whereas Southampton charge 180 and Dorset charge 190. So I'm just wondering why we're charging significantly less than the others.
So we're compliant. I can't speak for how they do it, but our fees, they're an application fee and then followed by the license fee. So although it looks initially like a new vehicle is quite cheap at 109, that is literally the administration of that new vehicle application. And then once we've approved the application, they then have to license it for a year. So in total, they would be charged for a private hire vehicle, 109 plus 166. So it'd be 275. It's been a long time since I went to school and didn't have to have a calculator. So when you look at it in that context, we are more, and our drivers, I think, is the main one where we seem to be significantly higher for a 3-year license.
That's great. That's really clarified it. Thank you.
Can I just refer members to item 16, the summary of the financial implications. The fees must cover the cost of delivery of the service. The finance officer has reviewed the proposed fees and confirmed that they do not exceed the cost to the service. So it's obviously been reviewed. Are there any further questions, members? Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, looking again at the benchmarking, sorry, Naneka. You've got the examples of Southampton, Dorset and New Forest. Presumably they are the current fees that are charged, and without the increases for presumably everybody's going to be increasing this year, aren't they? So presumably those are the current ones and not the new ones that will be coming in later. Or have you included that?
Well, Southampton
clever and included that.
Well, Southampton is 2024. They reviewed theirs in January, and New Forest have just completed a review, and that is what they consulted on. So that is what they will be this year.
So it's pretty up to date then. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Keddy.
Thank you, Chair. My maths is not fantastic. If it was in percentage terms, is it meeting inflation? The increases that are proposed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions at all?
I'm sorry, I'm going to be really awkward at these. So I'm aware that we're all facing cost of living and inflation issues, and the drivers obviously are, the business owners, and also the council are. And I'm just looking at these numbers and I'm thinking, you know, they're just odd numbers that we're increasing to. So would is it possible that we could round them up? Or would that just, I mean, it could be a very unpopular thing to say, but I'm just thinking, you know, because we'll have to think about future inflation as well in the next year and how things might go. Have we accounted for that as well?
Are they based on a 4% increase? Yeah.
So I'm Sophie Sadgick, I'm the Head of Public Protection. I've got licensing within my remit. We have undertaken a fee review across the entirety of the service. Statutorily, we need to set the fees in a way that we're not generating additional money on top of it, and we're purely funding the cost of the service. So when we look at the functions that we undertake in order to license a vehicle, license a driver, etc., it's done on a really specific basis. What certain functions those officers have to undertake, what functions the senior officers undertake, what functions the technical support officers undertake, and then it's costed on an hourly basis against each specific function, and that's why you then get a random number at the end. But that is then a reflection of, you know, the cost to the service of the functions themselves. So it wouldn't be appropriate to round them up or round them down, because that wouldn't create a true reflection of the work that's being undertaken to hit that fee.
Thank you.
Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. Just remind me, if you please, because looking at this chart here, for both private and Hackney, it looks like it's a buyer's market. In other words, that a driver could take their driver's license from one particular location, their vehicle license from another location, and then operate in the free tax. Is that actually the case? Perhaps you can explain to me why we see perhaps vehicles from the New Forest or from Southampton on the streets of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole.
Okay, so for a license for private hire, you have to be licensed. It's a trifecta. So for a private hire operator, they can only run private hire vehicles and private hire drivers, which are licensed by the same authority. So United Bournemouth can only use United Bournemouth private hire vehicles and drivers from Bournemouth or Poole or Christchurch, because we're zoned still for the BCP. Hackney Carriages are zoned. But operators, there's no sort of set off. So United have also set up an office in Wimborne, and they're using Dorset Council drivers because they've got a Dorset license as well, and Dorset vehicles, and they can accept fares or journeys anywhere. So what they're doing is they're either cross-bordering with United in Bournemouth. I mean, David Lane will probably be able to give you a better explanation. Mine's very simplistic. They're either cross-border hiring with United in Bournemouth, Bournemouth United are getting the call, and they're saying, yeah, but we'll dispatch it through our operators in Dorset Council, and that's why you're seeing a lot of Dorset Council vehicles in the area. And there's nothing, you know, that's not illegal. There's nothing to stop you. Also, Hackney Carriage vehicles and drivers, they can work on a circuit on a pre-booked basis under an operator, and they're not limited to wherever they work. So a Hackney Carriage driver vehicle from BCP could think, you know what, I think I can get more money working in Bristol. So they could go up and then work for an operator in Bristol and operate there as a private hire pre-booked journey people, which is why we get Uber drivers or Uber vehicles here working under the Uber umbrella from probably Southampton, because there's bookings here to be made. and it's nothing illegal about it, unfortunately, and we've got no control over that.
Thank you, Chair. That explains the questions which we may have from our residents and visitors to town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Any further questions? Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. So I've just, maths is not my forte, but I've just done some rough calculations. It's about a 4% increase from last year, isn't it? So which is kind of consistent with the previous item. So just thank you.
Thank you. If there are, oh, Sophie.
Thank you. Can I just add a little bit of context as well for the committee? So previously, a number of months ago, we looked at the policy itself around things like Euro 6 emissions, and we did a comparison there between us and other local authorities. This is a really challenging balance to strike in making sure that we've got the right fee cost recovery, but also that we retain, you know, a level of control over the standards of vehicles in our area. You know, licensing is about making sure that you know, the vehicles, the drivers, the operators are safe and are working in the right remit, and they are hitting the right conditions. So this is a very challenging balance to make sure that exactly what Councillor Farquhar said, you know, the rules do not restrict in some areas, you know, vehicles and drivers coming cross borders. We have different standards to other local areas, and what's really important is making sure that we hit that balance right to make sure that our passengers, our drivers, our operators are, you know, reflected, and they are safe, and they are operating in the right ways, and the conditions are met, as well as making sure that we are working on a recovery basis for our fees to make sure that they are providing the right level of service to the drivers, the operators, and vehicles as well.
Thank you, Sophie. Members, the recommendations are similar to the previous one. Item A, agree the fees as stated, or agree amended fees, or C, maintain the current fee structure. I'm happy to propose from the chair that we agree as stated in the report. Are members happy with that? Okay, thank you. Agreed. Item A. Recommendation A, should I say. Moving on then to agenda item 8, review of licensing fees. The committee is asked to consider the licensing fees and charges that should apply from the 1st of April 2024 for the next 3 years for those licensing activities where the council has discretion to do so. Nanka, are you happy to report?
Yes, thank you. I don't know why I left the 3 years in actually, but never mind. Sorry. So yes, so again, these are other licensing fees from our other licensing sort of arm, as it were. So these cover scrap metal dealers, pleasure boats, and sexual establishments. Once again, they are set on a cost recovery basis for the functions and the actions performed by the officers based on the time taken in each case. And again, a 4% uplift has been applied to these fees to reflect the increased costs. The fees are so scrap metal fees are a 3-year license. Pleasure boats and sex establishments are a 1-year license. Just for context, I've set out there that the fees under the Licensing Act, which is, you know, the larger area that we do work under, they're set by statute. We don't have any control over those fees, but those fees have not been changed since 2005, and there's been no change in that at all, and it doesn't look like there's any change on the horizon, although there was a consultation last year, so fingers crossed on that. And the other large area that we work under is the Gambling Act, and there's a statutory minimum set for those fees, and we reached that last year, so we haven't got anywhere to go on those, so they're not under review at this time. So I've set out the fees within the appendix. I haven't benchmarked them because it's a little bit of a different situation from the other report, because you know, you're either licensed in BCP or you're not really. The scrap metal, we've got site licenses and collectors licenses, and they're set out there. And the pleasure boats and water boatmen, we don't have lots of them. We've got one boat person, license. And then the sex establishments and sexual entertainment venues, we have 3 of each within the area. So although they are set out on a cost recovery basis for each function, the numbers are very limited. So they're not a full cost recovery as in it funds lots of officers. It's cost recovery of that function as part of the wider licensing regime. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanika. Do you have any questions at all? Councillor Williams.
Hopefully it's an easy question to answer. With the boat licenses, does this cover visiting boats? We used to get paddle steamer coming in and that kind of thing.
No, the boat license is literally self-drive boats or boats taking up to 12 passengers, inland water only. It doesn't cover coastal waters. So it's the harbours only.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. I have on my register of interests sex establishments and sexual entertainment venues and gambling venues as a interest or interest to myself, in that I'm predetermined. Consequently, what I do in these meetings, with your permission, is I add to the debate if possible, but I will abstain on any vote on these fees, and I'd like that noted in the minutes of that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. I'm sure that that will be accommodated. Councillor Howell.
Thank you. On scrap metal fees, do we have some kinds of ongoing monitoring exercises that seek to determine whether these dealers are, operating within the law? Is that a part of the requirement, and is that included in the costs and the charges if we do?
Yes, so part of the checks that are undertaken on renewal, they have to show, we check with the Environment Agency that they've got their collectors license, waste collectors license, waste movement licenses appropriately, and we regularly liaise with Dorset Police who deal with any complaints potentially that may be coming up, but we act on any intelligence whether there are any potential issues with venues, and we undertake joint visits with the police in those cases. But yeah, there's diligent checks. There's a DBS check at the time of renewal as well. So we check their basic DBS status to see whether there has been any concerns of criminality. And Dorset Police are fully aware as well. And it's all uploaded onto the Environment Agency website.
Thank you, Nanika. Michelle.
Hi, I'm going to actually follow Councillor Farquhar's lead here because I've got a predetermined decision interest in the sexual entertainment venues. So therefore, I want to abstain from anything and vote for that, if that's possible.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure that will be recorded. If there are, oh, there we go. Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Nanka, sorry, Mr. Randall, stated that there's a basic DBS check. Can I actually ask who actually pays for that? Is it the licensee themselves? And there was a mention of the uploading to the environment site, etc. May I ask a question why it's not an advanced DBS? Is that something which is set in legislation? Because it seems concerning to me that if people, whether it be a sexual entertainment venue or handling scrap metal, there is perhaps more of a degree of scrutiny of those individuals which are actually applying for that license. So just a clarification that in legislation is it only a basic DBS which is required? Thank you.
So yes, the legislation states that a basic DBS is required only. They pay for that themselves in addition to the application fee. I don't know whether was there another part to it? Sorry.
No, Second Chair, that answers it. I didn't want a local authority inferring any additional costs for the DBS.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Thank you, Naneka. If there are no further questions, once again, the recommendation as set out on the agenda item is that A, we agree the fees as stated, B, agree and amended fees, or C, maintain the current fee structure. And just to note, this is not recommended, as this would mean that the service is not able to operate on a cost recovery basis. So once again, I'm happy to propose that the recommendation as A, agree as stated on the agenda item, with the exception of Councillor Farquhar and Councillor Doherty, who abstain from voting on this issue. But as a general consensus, our members happy we agree as item A.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. I've just been advised that what we are able to do is we're able to look at the scrap metal fees and the pleasure boat fees as a separate item to the sex establishments, which would then enable Councillor Farquhar and Councillor Dower to vote on those items. So if we take first of all then the scrap metal fees and the pleasure boat fees, are members happy that we look at recommendation A as stated on the report? General consensus. Thank you very much. And then the sexual establishment fees once again on a general consensus, with the exception of Councillor Farquhar and Councillor Dower. Are members happy with that?
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your understanding and your intelligence there, Chair. Thank you.
I think I need to thank Mrs. Cole for that.
She worked out.
Moving on then to item 9, Hackney carriage on private hire vehicle policy, minor amendments. Nananka, please.
Not see anything. Yes, so this is a request for a minor amendment to the current policy, although it is under review, just to clarify a couple of points. So the first point is the colour of private hire vehicles. Currently, there is no deadline provided, although we say that we want them to be changed to white. We didn't actually give them a deadline. So we're proposing in the new wording to provide a deadline of any existing private hire vehicles which are white must be resprayed another colour by the 31st of December 2024, and that's the same deadline as the Hackney carriages to all be sprayed white, so that we don't have that confusion between Hackney carriages and private hires. It's a clear differentiation between the two types of vehicles that we have. And did you want me to go on to the next one? Or
yes.
Do you want to...
Is there a vote required on this, or is it just?
Well, I presume just members that either agree the minor amendment or not.
So if we could do that as we go along, then
Okay.
to save time. The members happy with that proposal?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, could I just confirm that a private hire which is currently white will need to be sprayed a different colour?
Yes,
At whose cost?
theirs.
Thank you, Chair.
It's so there's no confusion between a Hackney carriage and a private hire vehicle.
I mean,
Members
it was stated, it has been in the policy since 2021. So anybody putting vehicles on since then would have known not to choose a white private hire. But historically, there are a few around that are still white.
Are members happy with that proposal of the date of the 31st, 12th, 24? Thank you. Ananka.
And then the next a minor amendment is a change to the best practice. That the best practice guidance was reissued last year in November, and it makes reference to access wheelchair accessible vehicles, and the guidance includes a specification for a reference wheelchair, which is slightly different from what is in our current policy. So our current policy referenced a wheelchair which was slightly larger. That's because it was based on previous guidance. So the guidance has been reissued and it's made an amendment. And what we'd found is we called up Acquire, which are the biggest national mobility provider of mobility vehicles. And they confirmed that actually the requirements that we previously had was quite large, and it was really limiting the number of wheelchair vehicles which would actually be acceptable under our policy. So we felt that this should be reflected as soon as possible to make, you know, accessibility to these a wider range of vehicles for our trade much easier. As I've proposed there, the proposing is that the vehicle would meet the following space standards, which is 13500 mil high, 700 mil wide, and 1200 mil long, as stated within the statutory guidance. And I've put a link there as well. And I have put a requirement. It is the licence holder's responsibility to ensure any vehicle meets this standard prior to purchase and presentation for its licence. We do have some drivers or some licence holders that are applying, and when they present the vehicle, it's not meeting the standards, and you then get into a bit of a bun fight because they've already bought it, and it puts our licence officers in quite an awkward situation. So although we give advice prior to it, we assist as much as we can. At the end of the day, it is the licence holder's responsibility to measure the space, and the guidance is there. So that's what we're proposing.
Thank you, Nananka. So basically that amendment is in accordance with best practice guidance. And do we have a date on that when we will amend?
Now, as in
straight away.
Immediately,
okay. Yeah. Okay. So are members happy with that amendment in accordance with best practice guidance? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Nananka.
Thank you.
Right. If that concludes item 9, moving on then to item 10, the forward plan. Can I ask Nananka to introduce the item, please?
Thank you. Just stripping off there. It's got a bit warm in here. So yes, we've got the forward plan, and just going through it. We've just done the first 3 items on the forward plan already today. The next item, number 4, is the pleasure boats and boat persons licensing policy. That actually was already considered by committee in December, and due to a lot of public consultation that's gone on for BCP over the last few months, that policy hasn't gone out to public consultation yet. It had anticipated going in January, but it just couldn't be accommodated by the consultation team. But I've been assured that will start the week commencing the 18th of March. So that's on the horizon, and the proposal will be to get it all done and dusted and the draft back to you probably at the next full committee in May, to agree a final version of that policy. So the statement of licensing policy, that's currently being reviewed at the moment. We've had 2 working party meetings with members and our legal officer and the police in attendance. So we've gone through those, the current policy, discussing it, and we're now in the process of creating a draft for the working party to sort of consider before it's then brought back before you. And the aim is to bring that back to you for September, and then go out to public consultation. Similarly, the review of Hackney carriage and private hire policies. So we've got the driver, the vehicle and the private hire operator policies all under consideration. We've again had 2 working party meetings with members and representatives from the Dorset trade in attendance, and we've gone through the best practice guidance that was released last year. We've discussed that in relation to our current policy. So once again, we're in the process now of sort of creating some new revised drafts that the working parties will consider before it's all brought back to you again with the aim of September. Item 7 is a review of the scrap metal policy. That shouldn't need too much tweaking, to be honest with you. There's not a lot of change. So I've got September in there for that to come back to you as well. And then the review of statement of licensing principles under the Gambling Act policy. We were due to start a review. There is some sort of movement with regard to guidance being issued by the Gambling Commission on what should be contained within the policies. The Gambling Commission issue very detailed guidance on what they consider should be contained within local authority policies, and that guidance is currently being reviewed. So speaking with the legal officer, we don't really want to do a review and then have to do another review because guidance has been changed. So what we think we may well do is, obviously there's quite a lot of policies being reviewed this year, so we may just sort of put that on the back burner a little bit during this year and then commence a review next year once we know that all of the guidance is in place. So you know, we've got a policy that we will be able to rely on until that review's taken place. But I think we'd much rather, there's quite a lot of change going on with regard to limits and online gambling, and there's quite a lot of interest in that area at the moment, and I'd rather get the policy right than do it just because we've got a deadline coming up and then have to redo it again. It puts quite a lot of pressure on officers and members, to be honest with you. You've got a lot of policy, so it'd be nice to get it so that we can stagger things a little bit as well. So hopefully that set that up.
Thank you, Naneka. Do members have any questions or observations with regard to the board plan and the briefing and training sessions at all? No, all happy? Okay, thank you very much. If there being no further business, then I would close the meeting at 10:52 and thank everyone for their attendance. Thank you very much.